guys, happy Friday. Welcome to our color block mini fringe earrings class. In today's class, I'm going to show you a really fun technique that is, as always, versatile and adaptable to your style and to your ideas. It's going to start with just a basic ladder stitch to just kind of build a way to bring together about 9 strands of fringe, and then it gives you a flat edge to link to a finding. And I found these really cute findings when I was in store that look like a little half moon. And so today we're going to use the really, really small ones. And I'll show you guys this all close on the mat. But there are 2 other sizes of findings in those packs. And in future classes, I will use those as well. So we can use everything we've got. But for today, we're just working with the small ones because we're working with some 11O seed beads. And the 11O seed beads I'm using are a Miyuki, the Japanese Miyuki rounds. And you can use any colors you want. The colors that I used in the handout and on the original samples was a beautiful ivory and a turquoise blue. But you can go with any colors you like, and I'll show you another sample of one that I have going in some bright purple. All right, so I'm going to switch my camera really quick and show you the project up close. I'm going to switch that over right here. All right, and so what I've got here on the mat is the finished sample. And I've got another colorway to inspire you. And this one I did on silver. So there's gold and silver versions of the findings. And I just thought that one was so pretty. The way that that glowing purple comes out. Yeah, Sharon says, oh, purple. I love purple too. So this one was one that I needed to see come together. So I have that sample ready to go. But the basic structure of this is you just start by making what looks like a little hula skirt. Seriously, like you can maybe, if you have another application for this, like if you wanted to make it go in a full circle, you could make this like for $1 or something. It's just, there's so many ideas you can do. But it looks like a little mini hula skirt, and then we attach the little finding to the top of it. And the way to do that is with a cute little embellishment. And the reason I did this little extra here was just to support the center, because there is not a center hole in that finding. And so turning things into opportunities is one of the things that I've been trying to think about, like, oh, how can I use that more creatively? Well, this is one thing that came to me because it has that little hole at the top. So you can just join it to there, and there's still lots of room for you to get a little jump ring in there. And it ended up being the artistic element that I feel like made the design. So that's just a really fun serendipitous thing, the way that came together. So for class today, I'm going to grab the beads and the thread and show you constructing the hula skirt part. And it's super, super easy. It's a ladder stitch with some fringe, goes really fast. And then I'll show attaching it and adding that little connection. And again, all of the products that I've used and all of the instructions are downloadable in this PDF. And Millie's already added it to the chat, so you guys can find it there. And so let me just show you some of the things that aren't out on the mat really quick. The thread that I used is good thread, and I used the white color. There's also black if you'd like to do a different colorway. Both of those are going to look pretty cool. And I used a size 11 beading needle, and so I'm going to get one of those out. And then I also used the 2 colors of Miyuki, and those I showed earlier, 11O. And what I found is that the 11O seed beads were a really great size for the small finding. For this one here, if you ladder 9 across. What I also was going to experiment with, and I thought might be fun, was seeing what counts are needed to do some of the bigger ones, both with 11O, or you could also maybe go up to size 8O seed beads, or even size 6O seed beads, and make something either that's like a pendant or a super statement. I feel like that will work. So this style could be created in other seed bead sizes, just using the other size findings in the pack. But like I was saying earlier, I also have ideas for these bigger ones, kind of in the realm of like a nice cuff bracelet, and I have a pendant idea as well. So you'll be seeing that come up probably in the next month or so. So I'm going to just dive in. I'm going to dive in with starting to create them, how to put it together. It's super easy. And so you, like I was saying earlier, any colors you want. I'm going to just stick with what I've got here so it matches what I've got in the instructions. But I'm just going to create the top with the ivory color. And you end up with a little kind of, looks like a little top part of the skirt. And so for how much thread to cut, that's here too. But you want to start with about 60 inches or so. So, you know, a little under a wingspan. You don't need much of a tail. I have a trick for finishing this design that makes it a little bit easier to, you know, instead of having to do a very complicated weave in, I have a little trick to show you guys at the end for how to get that to work. I'm just gonna grab my scissors and cut there about 60 inches or so. Okay, so we got that, that's ready. And I'm gonna get the needle going here. And I thought I would spend just a minute because I did get some feedback from last week about the needle threading. So if you are struggling to thread your needle, one of the easier ways to do it is to just kind of bring the thread as close as you can, just right there like that, so that it's just barely sticking out from your thumb and your index finger. And then bring your needle over. And then just kind of try to bring that needle over the thread. And it works most of the time. If you're having trouble, the things I usually do, if I can't get it to work, I'll spin the needle and try to load it from the other side, because there's a side of the needle that always kind of works a little easier than the other, or trim the edge. Last but not least, you can try moistening the edge or using some wax. So something like a thread heaven or, you know, things like that. Needle your thread, don't thread the needle. That's what Cindy says. Yeah, that's great, great advice. Okay, and to start, what I'm going to do is the basic ladder with 4 seed beads. So start with 4 11-0. And I'm just picking these up over here on the mat. So just the side over here. But you want to get those 4 11-0 seed beads on. And slide it down to the bottom of your thread. And then leaving about a 7-inch tail or so. It doesn't actually have to be exact. I think 7, even a little less, but if you want to have maneuverability, we're going to use this to do just a small knot and a little maneuver to pull the knot up into the work. So you just want to have enough that you can do that with. So leaving that there, tail side, working side. From the working side, you're going to come around and go back up through the first 2 beads here. So those are the first 2 we strung. And we're heading up in that direction. So we essentially just went and made a loop. So I'm going to pull this through and show the loop. So that's essentially what we did. We strung 4, and then we came back and we just went through our first 2 beads. So we're just doing that. Super easy. And to preserve your tail, you can pinch those first 2 and just tighten by pulling the one on your right. This is my right hand over here. And so what you're going for is that little square. And once you've got that, you've got the first 2 of the 9 stacks of 2 we're going to do for this ladder start. So I like to do one little extra thing here before I carry on with the rest of the ladder, because this first one is going to loosen up on us as we go. So what I do is just go back down through the first 2 here, and just pinching everything in my fingers like that, just holding everything tight. Pull that down, come back up, and go back down through. So I just loop through it an entire journey through. And that leaves us right there. And now it's nice and tight. So let's pick up 2 more beads in that same color. And then just head right back down through the last stack of 2. And this is going to be repeated now as we keep going. I know a lot of you guys are already laddering experts, so thanks for sticking with me on this one. I'm going to go through it like someone hasn't seen it before, just in case. But so we're going to come up through the second one. And then Now we're in this spot right here. And so if you wanted to, you could go around again, reinforcing, but I feel like after the first one, you probably won't need to. And the reason is because when we add the fringe, we're gonna end up going back through it again for that. And they're gonna go through it an additional time when we add the finding. So that's gonna be 3 trips through this ladder. So other than that first one, I just didn't reinforce, but what I did do is I make sure every single one is nice and tight before I add the next one. Because what will happen if you have loose spots now is the subsequent stack will come on, but that little gap will stay. And then when you come back through it, even if you're nice and tight coming back through it, you'll have a little bit of extra thread. Because once you bring them back together, you'll have more thread than you need to cover that distance, so it might stick up a little bit. So at this step, the best thing to do is just kind of pinch it, right? Pull nice and tight. You can even use your thumbnail. Just tighten every single one. And then just pinch it in your hands. And eventually this will be second nature. You'll go super speedy through it and just automatically knowing how to hold it and everything. But practice if it's new. So you got it just like that, right? Pinch everything down and bring your needle right up through that stack, just like that. And I don't even let go of it. Just hold on to it. Bring everything through. And now this connection here, these two, that's locked in now, nice and tight. But I'm still going to hold this one as I come through the next. So this next stack of 2 here. Just pinch it like that. Bring that needle through. And I'm holding it tight enough to leave an indent. So just to give you an idea, so how to hold your work. It really does help. All right, so I need to do 5 more stacks. Here's 2 more beads. Again, I'm just going to hold on to everything nice and tight. And bring that through. Looks good. Keeping on holding on to it. And then going right up through the next 2. Just like that. And then let's go ahead and add 2 more. So we have 6 of those. We need 3 more. We're going for 9. And so the only thing I'm doing that's, even remotely different than what I would regularly do is I'm watching out for the tail, and I'm being extra careful with each new add that I haven't created a gap in my last stack compared to the one before it. So it just keeps going. And I think we need 1 more after this. There we go. All right, so let's make sure that I counted correctly. You never know with me on a live. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. Yeah, so we've got 9 here. And I just flipped it over in my hand so that my working side is headed down, because that's going to become our first fringe strand. The tail is now here at the top, and I'm just leaving it behind. Later on, we're going to use it to help us connect. And so basically from here, we're just going to follow the same convention. And this is totally open to change. Like, you could make this anything you'd like it to be. If you like what we've got here with this design, I started by adding 4 seed beads in the same color as I did the ladder. So it just looks like one size of it, one color block. And then I added 13 of the contrasting color. The last bead is our turning bead. So we'll turn and then just come back up through it, and then come out through the next stack and carry on with our fringe. So let's make a few of those together. So I'm going to get my other color out. Just kind of put that one right next to it. And off camera, what I have, this is a messy mat full of stuff, but my 2 colors are just kind of side by side so that I can get them. And here's our piece. So let's start with 4 of the color A. And then I need 13 color B. So I usually do, because I have a really hard time with my counting, I have to like double check. I usually do 5. And then I'll grab 5 more. And then I'll just add the extra 3. Okay. So slide that down. And then just take a look at the very last bead you added. You want to skip that bead. And then come up through all these beads that we added. And just try really hard not to miss any of them. And this is easier done flat on the mat. I'm just holding it up so you guys can see. When you get to the last ones, just double check you didn't miss any. Just hold it up, take a look, make sure everything is where you'd like it to be. You should have gone through every bead. And then just continue through this last stack. And you see how it's loosening up on me as I do that? Before I do anything else, I'm going to come back down here and get the one that I was stringing on originally and tighten it. So that's this one that should be coming out of the bottom of your needle probably. See that? Tightened up everything there at the top. And now from here, you do want to lay it flat. You grab that last bead, which is now kind of looped like that. And just pinch it like that. And then grab your needle and bring it through. And what you want to do is you want to hold this side while pulling the needle side. And it'll do this for you. Pull this up real quick. And getting the tension right on fringe, it's kind of it's something you feel out kind of, but you don't want it too tight or the fringe will start to curl, but you don't want it loose because then you'll get a gap. So there's a balance there. And so what I like to do is just kind of make sure there's no gap, but I'm not pulling so hard that it starts to move, right? And once you've got it where you'd like it, just come down through the next side. And once you do this part, it should pretty much lock it in, especially once you add the next strand. But right before you keep going, just make sure it's got some flow to it. And the good news is this thread is so light and airy that I feel like the fringe just kind of naturally gets the right tension and flow because it settles and it slides around a little bit as you add the next ones. So it really does come together pretty nicely. So let's make a few more. Here's 3 and 4 of our color A. Here's the next 5 here. And 5 more. Now the next 3 for a total of 13. Slide that down. And I'm going to show you guys how I usually do it. I was holding it up before, but what I usually do is I have it flat on a work surface. I'll just slide that bead down that I want to skip. And then just come right up. All of these beads. And continue all the way up through the top one there. And pull it through just a little bit. And then when you get to about there, just grab the rest. And if it's moving around on you, that's okay. Kind of jumps around on me too. But there we go. So let's see, we're still good on time. I'm gonna do one more. And then I do have a sample that has all the fringe done. So we don't have to sit and do all 9 rows, although it does go pretty quick. It doesn't take too long. So I'm just gonna quickly string them on and just show pulling it through one more time. There's my 4 beads. Thanks, Sharon. Those. And the last 3. Okay, and slide that up. And once again, just gonna skip that last one. And just head up through all the beads. Continue through the top part there. And that looks good. Okay. So as you keep going, everything just comes together really nicely. One thing I really liked about this design was I found that it really did stay nice and flat. Like the bottom of it lines up really well. And so there's a lot of uniform, nature of these beads is really, really awesome. Okay. So I'm going to just set this one aside really quick. It's good. It's ready to go, and I'll just continue it and I'll add it to the finding when I finish it later. But over here, I have one that's ready for the finding. I want to double check though before I keep going. Is everyone feeling good about the ladder row and adding that fringe? Does that make sense to everybody? Just give me a shout if it didn't. I do think we'll have time at the end and maybe we can do it again. So what'll happen when you finish your fringe is your working thread will end up right where your tail is. So it'll meet the tail over here and you'll have this little hula skirt all ready to go. So I'm going to grab a finding really quick. And for this design, I had switched over to the silver and was working with stainless. You can do anything you'd like. But I just wanted to see different colors and inspire you with different, different palettes you can try. So I'm going to grab, they come with 2 sets. So you'll be able to make 2 earring pairs out of every single one of these packs that you get with a small one. Okay. So you can see the width just works out perfect. It just lines up awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and put a needle back onto my working side. Or 2 needles. There we go. All right. So all of this is diagrammed. You don't have to memorize this thread path. I'm going to show it in detail, but it's all right here. And so just in summary, from where we are right here, we're exiting from this little edge bead. We're just going to come up from the front of the component, right, and go through this little edge hole here. And then this is behind the component, this part of the thread path you're seeing here. We're going to go behind the component, come down through the second stack, wind right back up here, going in front of the component and through it, again coming behind it, and then we'll carry on, just getting to where we want to be. When we get over here, we're going to jump up out of this bead, add our embellishment, come through here, flip it over, add the same embellishment on the back, come back down to the same bead, and then we'll carry on from there. And I'm going to show a couple of things that as we go that I'll explain it in better detail as we get there. But if you follow this thread path, you'll end up on the front side having the thread exiting from this side right here. And on the back, it'll kind of taper in like that. And the reason I did that is it just gave it a little extra stability, but you can experiment with this if you want to. You can try and see, maybe there's even a better way. I tried a few different things, and what I found was, I wanted it to stay right edge to edge. And when I tried to do a bunch of extra thread pathing to make it stay, same front and back, I ended up with a lot of different passes, making lots of loops, and I couldn't quite get there. So that's why it has this thread path, but just because I couldn't figure out a better way doesn't mean that you won't. So when you're playing with it, just know that this was a design choice. It's not like this is the only way. And so what I did was I went through let me bring this a little closer, it's easier to see. And you got to kind of ignore the tail. The tail's going to get in your way. It's a little bit hard to ignore at this point because it's just like right there. But I'm going to bring the working side through this part right here from the front. And so just bring that through. And then you'll want to go down through the next stack. So through the second stack. And again, I'm just keeping that tail out of my way. And when you do that, this is the back, that's the front there. You got your first attachment pretty much ready there. And so from here, I'm just going to come back up through the first stack again. And then I'm staying on the front of the component this time. and through from the front of the component, which is this side here, through to the back. And I'm going to come again down through the second stack right there. You'll have an easier time getting this tight, working flat on your bead mat. But after you add the second pass and you tighten it down, it'll tighten the first one. So you don't have to worry about that. So now we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to flip it over. Well, first I'm going to come up through the second stack here. Sorry, third stack. Right here, the third one. And avoiding getting the little fringes caught. Just go slow, because that happened to me a lot when I was working on these. Okay, so I'm back at the front of the component here. Just gonna get that tail thread out of the way. So from here, we've got this edge attached, and it feels a little precarious, and it's definitely, you know, you wish there was another place to go here. But if you want to turn down through the next stack from where we are here. So now we're just traveling. We're trying to get to the middle. Just by going down through one, up through the next one, while avoiding getting our fringes and our tail tangled up. Always an adventure. So now we are right here at the middle. Okay. And now it's going to all start to come together. So what I did is I did my colors first. So I'm going to get some of my purple beads out. And you only need 3. So 3 and 3. So pick up 3 of your contrast color and then 3 of the starting color, which for us was the ivory. So there's my 3 and 3. And then just go through that top hole of your component and pull that through. So just like that. And then you want to turn this way. And here at the back, remember we just need to do what we did before, but in reverse, because we're going from the top down, not the bottom up. So that you want to string this color and then the color first. From here, you want to go down through the center stack. So it's the one you're exiting. You'll be able to spot it just like that. There you go. So there's our back, and the front is on this side. And so far, so good. So everything's a little loose still. Don't worry. We're going to go through to the other side and connect this other side. And then we're going to come back and reinforce everything. So the avoiding getting the fringe tangled, I think, is just the only remotely tricky part of this. We're just traveling right now. We're going down through the next, or sorry, that was up through the next one, down through the one after that. And then this next one is our second one. Okay. So here we are exiting out of the second to last stack. And what I'm going to do is go through the component. Now I'm on the back side, and you can tell because I'm on the back. I'm going through the second stack here. If you're on the front, match what you did on the front. But from the back, you'll probably find that if you've gone the same thread path as me, you'll end up here. And so I'm just matching what I did. And I'm going to come through the first stack now. Tighten that up. And let's go through that one more time. And so I'm going to come up through this one right here. And what I'm doing right now is I'm being really mindful. I don't want to puncture the thread that is in the beads. I'm just going, and also couple of tricks. I am controlling the tension a little bit at this point because I don't want to cinch up my connections on these edges. So there's a little bit of a gentle tension that I'm going for. So just back through the first stack now. And I'll show you what that looks like on the front side really quick. And so everything seems pretty good, but we can make it better by going back through it just one more time, and then we'll meet our tail over here, and I'll show you a quick way to finish it. So let's go ahead and go up through this one here. And at this point, you will notice it getting tighter because this is now, for this bead, I've lost count, but I think it's maybe even the 5th pass through it. That's why I chose the Miyukis, because they tend to have a little bit larger hole diameter. But having said that, if you switch to a 12 beading needle, you should be able to get the check 11 up to work fine too. And the other really good thing about heading back through all of this is you get to reinforce because when we went this way, we were going up, down, up, down. Now we're going down, up, down, up. So you get to reinforce both sides of the ladder row, which makes it look stronger. I'm gonna come down through this one. Through the next one. Okay. Now I'm up through this second stack right here. And what I did to finish mine was I went ahead and went through the component from the second stack here. I'm working at the back. Let me pull this through so I don't lose my thread. And I'm going to flip it over so I can see what I'm doing here on the front. What I've got is my tail thread. The tail thread is what I'm pulling on and moving right now. And all of this motions going through all these beads, I did it without pulling super tight. It was just for strength. So not like really pulling on it, right? And I'm going to go down here, and this tail thread and this working thread, I'm going to go ahead and, guys, it's okay, don't worry. I must sound mine, but I'm going to tie a knot. Those of you guys know I usually don't like doing knots, but there's just not a lot of places to go to get our really good weaving in. I know, Cindy, Valerie, I know. But it's going to be okay. So I'm going to tie a knot here, a double knot with the tail side and the working side. Just really gently. Not a crazy knot, just a nice gentle knot. Okay. And that knot is currently visible. And we're not totally in love with that thought. So let me show you really close where it is right now. I pulled on it, and you'll be able to move it because this is nice silky thread. So you'll be able to slide it around. But you see how it's kind of just right above the bead there? And you almost can't see it now. So, but we're going to make it even easier to hide it. So now, remember, my working thread was coming out of this hole on the finding, and my tail thread was coming up out of the bead, and we tied a knot, a double knot. I'm going to go down through this stack of 2, and I'm going to pull that knot into these beads. So let's just go right through here. And in this case, I'm being really gentle. I'm actually pushing up on the wall of the bead as I go through it. So I'm not puncturing any thread. You won't be able to get that knot through if you puncture thread right now. Okay. All right. And so we've got the working side is now exiting from this bottom. And I'm just going to go ahead and gently pull it down. See the knot slip right into the bead there. And then if you want, you can do it again. Just tighten. And that knot is inside that stack. So if you want, you can just trim right here. And it should be fine. And that's how I ended all my earrings. And I've been wearing them, and they're not, number one, let me show you the ones I've been wearing a lot. They're not showing gaps either. And I just thought that was kind of cool. And most importantly, the knot held. The knot has not come undone. The knot has not unknotted. So yeah, it's good. And I'm going to go ahead and trim it. So let's get the scissors. Okay, pull this one. Okay. There it is. Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, so it is pretty cool. And I'm gonna put the findings on now. So in your handout, I wrote down the part numbers for the gold findings that I used. So I used 4mm jump rings in gold, and then I used ear wires in gold. But I wanted to share also, because right now I'm working with, I got inspired to work with the silver finding. The same exact sizes and styles are available in the stainless. So you can use either one you want. If you like the gold and you bought the gold connectors, and that I feel like is really the match for the turquoise. I liked gold with turquoise. It was just kind of what lit me up that day, but you can always go with stainless, and that is what I did on this one right here. So I'm just going to pop the findings on real quick, and then we have time to start again because it's only 38 past the hour, so we're really good on time. Get some pliers. So I'm going to need some square chain nose pliers. So there's the ones that have like a little square on the front. And then I like to use my bent nose pliers to do my jump ring opening and closing. And so let's get the jump rings going. These really tiny jump rings, they come in this little bag, and I keep them in there because they are so small that they can kind of sometimes slip out of the clamshell if you're storing them in your clamshells. But I'm going to show you something in a second that I did with a little tool I found at Michael's. My gold ones, I put them in one of these little containers just because it's easier for me to get them. I'm eventually going to do that with my stainless. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. I need to go get some more little packs. So I'm going to open, let's see. These are so good that you can't even find the seam barely. There's a seam on there, I swear. You see it at the top? I'm going to hold my pliers so that it's keeping one side of my jump ring nice and closed. Or sorry, it's preserving the circle shape. And then the bent nose pliers, I'll use to open it with a lateral motion. So just like that. It'll pop the jump ring open, but it still stays in a really pretty circle. And you'll be able to maneuver with ease around the seed beads. Just get right through them. I didn't have my jump ring open wide enough, possibly. I'm going to open that just a little wider. There we go. Yeah, you'll have to open your jump ring pretty wide to get that through, but the seed beads aren't blocking you. It's just getting the jump ring over the edge of the connector, actually. And just want to close that right back up. And if you get that clicking sound, that's perfect. That means you've got tension on the jump ring. So it's really going to hold really nicely. And then pop another one on, and this will make it sit forward when you're wearing it. So again, just opening that. And I'm going to close this jump ring. I should have named these the hula earrings. They feel like a little Hawaiian hula party. So I've got those all ready, and now I just need an ear wire. Pop that on there. And these have a seam that opens on the side that's facing this part of the ear wire. So the little seam is right there. So if you just get your pliers on the front, just at that spot right there, just hold the ear wire, move the pliers so that it opens it. And you can keep the little, there's a coil and a little ball, they might slide around, just try to keep those down. And figure out where your front of the earring is. And whatever the front is, if you suspend the earring, just kind of dangle it, you'll be able to tell and get it right like that. And then before you close it, just hang it and make sure that the front side is where you want it. And I'm not sure if I accomplished that, so let me just take a quick look. No, I did. I got it. It'll spin a little bit on you, but okay. And I'm just closing that right back up. Just putting it in a nice straight line there. That's all you gotta do. And you've got a whole earring all set. So I mean, from start to finish, these don't take very long. If I'd finished the fringe on the other one, it would have taken us another 15 minutes or so, and we'd have a complete earring. So you can make these in, you know, definitely under 2 hours for sure. You can make a pair and then make bunches of them. And I think they'd look really cute displayed together. You can even do like a mismatch. I don't know, it would be cute to have. I did something here where I put the colors in a different order. So probably by accident, to be totally honest. You can make these into any style you like. Here they all are. I want to check in and see, Millie, does anyone want to see step one again, or questions that I maybe missed in the chat?
I think we're all good. If you want to show us the start again, that'd be good.
Okay,
But everyone seems to be caught up. No questions so far.
awesome. Okay, yeah, I happen to have a nice amount of thread left right here from finishing this last one. Let's use that to show the start really quick again. Just in case anybody wasn't popped in late, the way you start this earring is you just do a laddered row of 9 stacks of 2. And so and of course there'll be a replay to show, I went through, you know, some tips and tricks, but just really quickly, you start with your 4 beads, leave a 7-inch tail. And of course this length would be roughly 60 inches for you. It'll give you lots of extra to do all your weaving around. But I left a 7-inch tail, and I'm coming up through the first 2 beads of the 4 we strung. So it makes a loop like this. We're going in a circle. Just bringing them all together like that, and you'll get this nice little square that pops up. And once you've got that square, go back through it one more time. So what I mean by that is to go back down through the adjacent stack here, because you see how it's loosening up, and it's going to loosen up a lot. That the first edition always does. Coming up through these, and I do it once at a time just because it gives you a way to tighten like that. So now we know we've got a nice solid square here, and so now I'm just going to travel and go through the next 2 to get where we want to be. And so that's not going to wiggle on you while you're trying to work. To create the rest of the stacks, you're going to do 7 more stacks from what we've got here. It's the same thing, you just pick up 2. And whatever side your thread is coming out of, you go through the opposite side, because your goal is to make this circle start to form. So it all pulls together in this nice little loop like that, and sits right next to the former. And just hold tight and come up through the next one. And that's all you got to do. So you just keep going like that until you have a total of 9. And the real trick here, when you get to the spot, you see how it loosens up a little bit. Even just moving it around a little bit, I could get that to loosen. Hold it nice and tight at this spot. So I'm pulling right here, and then pinching everything down. And then, oh, thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I've been working on camera. It's been my nemesis for so long, but it's just getting better and better. Keep trying new stuff. Yeah, and so there's our 4 beads. Next one. But yep, that's pretty much all you got to do, is just keep tightening those up and keep going. And then when you get a stack of 9 already, let me bring the other sample over. I buried it under all of my tools. Hang on. You keep going until you get a total of 9 in that laddered configuration. And from there, you'll have your thread exiting downward out of the last ladder like that. And you just start stringing your fringe. You skip the last bead, come back up through the stack down to the next one, and you just keep going until you're over here. And then you'll be at the spot where we added to the finding. And you can see how hard I was pinching it. I was really making sure that the tension stayed good. If it's leaving an indent like that, then yeah, you're doing it. yeah, so that's the design in a nutshell. Some of the things I was mentioning earlier about the findings themselves and the little pack that they came in, you'll get 2 of every size, so you'll be able to make. And they come in silver and gold. And what I was thinking was, I do have a few ideas in my head for what we could do with the bigger ones. And so you could do this design with bigger beads. I was saying you could do 8/0 or 6/0. I haven't tried it yet, but I have a feeling it's going to work. You may have to play with the counts a little bit, but I do think it'll work, something like that. And then also, these are one of my favorite ways to finish statement cuff bracelets. So in different sizes and things like that. So like you could take a herringbone design if you like to do herringbone stitch. I know a lot of you guys create beautiful herringbone and flat chenille. Anything that has an edge that looks like our edges here, where the holes of the beads are heading that way, are a really easy candidate to attach to one of these findings. And you just use the same method we've shown here. You can use that to finish all of your flat stitches that end with the holes facing that direction. And I bet you could even do it with the peyotes, where they're going this way. You would just have to come up and out of it. There's always a way. So, but this really lends itself, this connection style, to more than just the earrings we've done today. So yeah, definitely get your herringbone stitch bracelets out, connect them like that. You can put your findings on the ends, cute little toggle or something, put a charm on it. All those ideas.
Hi, Danielle.
Yeah.
We're just wondering if we can use this design with the larger ones, or will the fringe sag in the middle?
So my thoughts on that are, what would cause it to sag is if you had lots of, like, for example, if we tried to do an 11/0 on this one, I would need to try it, but you would need a lot more than 9 stacks. It would probably be more like 12 or 13 stacks, maybe 15. And at that point, it's a lot, right, to support. But that said, if you're supporting it through the center with this same little jump up thing, I still feel like it would work. But I don't know. My inclination would be to go up to 8/0 for that, because then you'd have less stacks to worry about. But if you guys, I'll try it this weekend, and I'll post it in our Facebook group. I enjoy doing these anyway, so I will just create a few versions and see what happens and test it out. And if anyone else wants to do the testing with me and you get there first, go ahead and share in our Facebook group and tag me so I can see. And we can tag team on this and figure out what works, and we can share it with everybody. But I know for sure it works with these little ones, and these I've been wearing, so I know they don't like over time change the way they're shaped. And the only other thought I had while we're chatting about whether or not it would stay in plane with the edge of the finding, maybe move up to wildfire. So we've been working with the good thread, which is beautiful for fringe, but if you're going to size up to like 8/0 beads, maybe go to the 0.006 wildfire and see if that, especially if you're going to go to 6/0, you definitely want to go up to something a little thicker. That will stabilize your ladder row, so it probably would support its own weight even without the finding. Yeah, so that all those things will probably work really good. And let's see. Any more questions for me on this design, or I can show next week? We got a couple of things already ready to go.
I
Oh,
think
that's
we're
right.
good with questions. If you want to show us the upcoming weeks, that'd be great.
Sure, yeah. So I am wearing next week's class. I'm gonna do something totally out of the box for new to me. Some macrame fringe. And I love these earrings. These are my style. I have been really enjoying wearing these. But the way they're made is with the very small micro macrame cord. And I'll bring that over and show it to you in a second. And this, I mean, to me personally, would have looked super intimidating about a month ago. But guys, I taught myself to do this in a month. And so if I can do it, anybody can. And I think you guys will love this. And so this is a very easy, it's just basically your half hitch knot. Some people call it a clove knot. I've heard a few different names for it, but there's really nothing to it once you get what's happening. And then you just make these little V's, and then this thread is so good that you can string your fringe on it. If it's 11/0 Toho with our 8/0 check, which is what you're seeing here, And then you just tie a nice little knot. And I did use a little bit of heat to burn the end, to kind of melt it. But you could also use glue if you want. So that's next week. And don't be scared. I'm gonna bring some larger cord to show the knot, like bigger, and then in the second half of class we'll show it with the small thread. This is super doable. And these were my like second or third tries, to get it right. So it's definitely doable, and I think it's worth getting through the learning curve, because once you get through the learning curve, then you'll just really start getting addicted to doing this, and it'll be like it's fast. You learn it so quick. Okay, and then the one after that, really quick. This was by request because you guys liked it, so I did go ahead and load it. This one is the right angle weave with the big crystals. And what's going on here is there's a little finding that we're going to make ourselves. And then it's a right angle weave design after that. And the cool thing about this is you can finish it with stitching with wildfire thread, or if you want, you can do it with beading wire. Beading wire is going to give you a little bit of a different flow. See, I've got it finished up here. And it gets weightier. So I like both versions. It's wavy and it has like kind of a little dancing to it with the beading wire. So if you're not a stitcher and you wanted to do beading wire, you can do it this way. It's really strong. This was stitched with wildfire. This one was done with the beading wire. Either one is a great option. And the funnest part is making our little connector, which stabilizes our right angle weave and makes because these are a little bit of a heavier bead. This is an 8mm check crystal, and it's a little bit hard to stitch and get it to stay put without some help, right? So the help we need is just we create our own little connector. So I'm really enjoying, I'm gonna teach you guys this one, and probably by the time we get to when the date of the live class is, you can download this PDF right now from michaels.com/classes. But by the time class starts, I'm gonna have a few other ideas out, because I mean, my mind kind of went crazy from here with ways we could build onto the side and things. So don't be surprised if it gets a little crazy. I'm gonna come up with some more stuff there. And then I have one that I don't know, I wanted to see if you guys, we've done something similar, so I was a little bit unsure. We don't usually do a lot of wire, but this one was kind of well received when I posted it earlier. And so I thought, if you guys want to do a class on this one, it's just a way to use seed beads in a new way with wire. And as a bonus, I can show you making ear wires, because I made those myself. We had a lot of fun. I did a class the other day with a friend of mine. We were just kind of playing with wire, and I didn't have any ear wires. So, hey, like, again, if I can do it, everyone can. Not always the expert when it comes to these things, but I had a really fun time. So I thought, hey, we'll just have fun together and try that out. But let me know if you guys think maybe we don't, because we have done stuff like this before. So it's a little bit, there's a slight extra thingy happening here with the gemstone, but it's something I feel like folks know a lot about. So, but I'm yeah, I love those. Okay, so it sounds like I'm getting some votes for yes on this one. I'll go ahead and submit it. And I think this one is, I mean, it's just a staple, right? It's so cute. It's beautiful. And these really pop on a display. So like when you're showing them off in a shop or something, they tend to jump out at people. So yeah, they're pretty cool. All right, so that's all I've got in the way of, future stuff. Let me switch back so I can see you guys. I've been changing and playing with my cameras, so apologies. I know I look a little green right now. I'm trying to fix I'm doing experimenting. And so if you mess with it, you can't fix it. Yeah, that's what happened. Okay, so I just want to say thank you for being here today, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys next Friday. And of course, this weekend and or throughout next week, if you want to post your experiments with today's design, I'd love to see if anybody tries any of the ideas we shared in class, or if you just create something beautiful, with this configuration. I'd love to see that too. And so that's PDFs and projects from John Bead and Facebook. You can also just anywhere in social media, #MakeItWithMichaels and #John Bead, and we'll see your work that way too. We always cheer each other on and share each other's work, and it's always really fun. We have a good community. So I'm really happy to have you guys here, and I'll see you next week.